Guys, if you could turn your microphones off, that'd be really helpful for the recording and all of that as well. So listen, hi, welcome to this Global EdTech Academy session in conjunction with Q and Microsoft. In this session, we're going to be exploring different ways in which we can use Microsoft Excel in the classroom. So I'm just going to hide this little banner down the bottom here, and I'm going to jump into my presentation. Obviously, you're here and you can hear me and all these different things. So if you can't see my PowerPoint on screen, then please do say that you can't see it so I know what's going on. That'd be super helpful for me. Now, it should be playing with inside Edge. It's not actually working for some reason, so that's absolutely fine. So I'm Mark. People know me as the ICT evangelist, and I'm a huge advocate for using technology to support teaching and learning in the classroom. One sticky area for lots of teachers that I've worked with whilst in post and in the work I do now has been the use of Excel. And for me, I absolutely love Excel. I think it's a really crucial tool in your teacher toolkit, not necessarily for teaching and learning, although there are lots of activities which we'll see today for which Excel can be used. But I've had colleagues in the past, and one of the issues, curriculum issues, lots of schools face is where children and their parents say, "Oh, I don't do maths." Well, of course you do. Everyone does maths. We need number literacy, don't we? Numeracy, in order to better sort of live our daily lives. And I've had colleagues equally saying, "I don't do Excel." And for me, that's something that really needs to be addressed. And so, if you're somebody who's really confident with Excel, say maybe today's session isn't quite for you, but give it a few minutes, and we'll see what you think when I sort of tell you the things we're going to be covering. If you think you're already confident in all those different areas, then by all means. And drop off the session if you don't think it's relevant to you. But I think you'll get some great tips, or at least I hope you'll get some great tips during the course of this session today. So a bit about me. I used to teach full-time for more than 20 years, in fact, and I've had a variety of jobs from teacher of to head of department to a variety of different SLT jobs. For those of you out of the UK, SLT is like the senior leadership team. And the work I do now, I travel the world and travel the country here in the United Kingdom, working with teachers and schools, helping them with teaching and learning, mostly with technology. I've written books, and I'll talk about some of those books in just a second. And I've got a variety of badges. And as I was saying to Barrett beforehand, when it comes to technology, it ain't so much what you do, it's the way that you do it. And hopefully my approaches during the session today will really, really help you. So I've written a few books, as I said. One that did really well was this one over here, Perfect ICT Every Lesson. And there's a vanity link there where you can find that nice and easily on Amazon, should you want to get it. With case studies about what works in the classroom. I wrote it quite a few years ago, but I still get regular comments from people who've recently bought it. They say, "I can't believe you wrote it, 6 years ago, 7 years ago," and there's still things in here I don't actually know about. So if you've got colleagues in your school, you might find it a useful thing to have. I've contributed to other books, such as this one here, the second big book of independent thinking. And I've written things like this one here. This is a guide to creating a digital strategy in education. And this book's actually free, which you can download from netsupportsoftware.com/digital-strategy. And in there, it can help you set up and get you thinking about what needs to be done in your schools to help get technology working well. I co-authored that with another gentleman, Mr. Al Kingsley. He's Al Kingsley Edu on Twitter. And it's well worth a good follow. I've also got a newsletter which you can sign up for if you're interested on my blog and my website at ictevangelist.com. Just go there and the pop-up will come up and you'll just be able to subscribe if you want to, and that'll get you straight in access to that. And you can also obviously subscribe to my blog should you want to. So I've got an activity for us to do today where I want to analyze some data. So I've created a little form, a Microsoft form at this address here, bit.ly/gettersurvey2. If you could, whilst I'm just talking now for a moment, just jump into that link, and I'll leave it up there for about another 30 seconds before I jump into my spreadsheet to see if it is actually working all right and the results are coming in. If you could jump onto that address there, that'd be really super helpful. And it just asks you some simple things. It's not like I'm collecting data on you. You can put a false name and a false age in if you want to. I'm not really trying to get information on you, but I'm just trying to get some information that I can then sort of do things with it. And actually, I'm using the wrong terminology there. Actually, I'm trying to collect data, because what I'm going to do is I want to try and turn that into information. As a computing teacher, something we share with the students is, data is becomes information when it's given a context, and that's a great thing that Excel can actually do. When you're gathering in data in the form of responses to quizzes and tests and polls and other things, Excel again is a really fantastic tool for turning these things around so that you can get some really powerful information from it. I was going to jump into Edge a second again and see if I can see that. Caroline's asking if I can drop that link into the chat. Yeah, I can absolutely do that. That'll save you having to type it. So great shout there. Here we go. Drop it straight in to the chat, he says. If the technology will work. It's picked up the formatting, sorry. So there we go. But there's the link, bit.ly/gettersurvey2. So I should be able to go through into my spreadsheet here now, just coming up a second. I can see, fantastic. So we've got some data coming through there already from Samuel. And is that, what age is that? I need to just, 39, I thought at 89 for a second. Thank you, Ganiyu and Melinda. Brilliant stuff. I didn't ask you your location for a second, and I thought I'd ask you a question where your location was, and you were all saying you're in Paris. I was like, zut alors, but you're not obviously in Paris. So that's fantastic, and please do keep doing that. So what we're going to be covering in this session, well, as I said, it's a session really for those who are aimed at those who are a bit nervous about using Excel. For many of you, it could just be a bit of a reminder as to some of the things that you can do, but that's the sort of the starting point I'm making here. And Caroline was talking with me on Twitter before, and I was explaining to her really that I want to take you from a sort of 0 to hero with some of the great things you can do. Obviously, there's more than you can do in Excel. I'm going to share with you today. And I watched recently a fantastic session through the Global EdTech Academy by Alice Keeler, for example, exploring a thing called pivot tables. I tweeted about it myself actually just this afternoon. So if you want to go and find that, you can do. There's a fantastic offer of sessions already being completed, which are available on the YouTube channel for Q. It's really, really good. But if you haven't sort of got this from me yet, I really am a huge fan of Excel. It is, pun intended, truly excellent. Oh dear. I'm a father. As soon as I became a father, dad jokes all through everything I sort of share and do. But I really do love Excel, and there are many reasons why I do, but many teachers do not. And so what I'm trying to do with the session today is to give you some confidence, some hints and tips, and things that you can do with Excel to make it really sing and work for you, to help you in your role as a teacher. So what are the things I'm going to be covering during the course of the session this afternoon? Well, there's a whole bunch of things here. I'll be talking about cell references. I'm talking about formulas, how you can add things up, how you can count things. There's a variety of ways in which Excel can actually count things. I'll be talking about replication, which is a feature you can use to actually make it much easier to create formulas for doing a bunch of different tasks for you. I'll be talking about using absolute cell references, and if that means absolutely nothing to you, don't worry, it should do by the end of the session. We're going to look at how we can go about naming ranges, how we can calculate grades from tests that you've given, and using filtering to help you sort of filter information inside your spreadsheet. And we're going to look at Microsoft Forms a little bit, because Microsoft Forms and Excel really do sing well together. So that's what we're going to be having a little play with and having a little go with. What I want us to jump into now, if we could, is this link here. Okay, so I'm going to copy that as Caroline suggested, a great suggestion before. I'm just going to pop back into our Teams tab a second. And if I go into here, I should someone's asking about a certificate of participation. There is no certificate of participation for the sessions, sorry, but there was something put into the Teams about it recently, so I'll find out about that and I'll get back to you later on in the session if that's okay. So here's the link to the spreadsheet that I'd like you to go into, and once I'm into that spreadsheet, you should now see all of you sort of jumping in here as well, and we should be able to see you jumping in with us and being able to see what's going on here. I'll just wait a second, make sure you're coming through, unless I've done the wrong spreadsheet. Let's double check that second. Is it on this one? It's the one for later. No, I'm sure this is the right one. Yeah, here we go. And I love working on spreadsheets. If you could come through onto sheet 1, if you could, for a second, and just could you tell me how confident you are at using Excel? Everyone who's coming in, welcome. You're all in as GC because you're a guest inside this spreadsheet. If you come through to sheet 1, could you please, and if you don't know how to, it's very simple, go to the home ribbon here, find the fill color, and could you sort of rag rate yourself in terms of your confidence with using Excel? So if you're scared, never used it, really worried about it, then go onto here and choose the red and color a cell in red. So choose your cell, click on the color, boom. If you're someone who's pretty confident at using Excel, then could you make it orange? And if you think, actually, Mark, from what you shared, I'm going to learn nothing, then make it green. And that will give me a really clear idea of how sort of confident you are in using Excel. And using these collaborative tools like this is a really simple way of actually bringing through some of your classes into give you some feedback when you're running sessions. If you're working using Teams, again, this is a great way of just getting a real visual quick cue as to how things are going on. So one of the things we're going to learn about during the session is cell references, and most of you are saying you're reasonably confident in using Excel. Someone's saying they're not. Someone's saying they're super happy with Excel. But I'll just explain this. Just like you can see across the top here, we've got the A's, B's, C, D's, E's, F's, and whatnot. These are your column headings. And alongside here, you've got some numbers, and these are your row headings, okay? And whenever you click into any of these cells, so I just click here, it will highlight the column heading and it will highlight the row heading, and that gives you your cell reference. Think of it like a map grid. So the cell that I'm now in is E8. It's really important to know the cells that you're in when it comes to wanting to sort of perform any calculations, okay? So that's really important. What I'm going to do now, if you could leave this spreadsheet, leave the tab open, we'll come back to it later on. But I wanted to sort of get a few sort of intro things in here with you, just so we can see a few things. If you jump back onto your view so you can see my screen, I'm just going to jump into this example spreadsheet that I have set up here. So this is just where I've put some information and data, some data into this spreadsheet manually. I put some fake names in there. Clearly, my name isn't fake, but my age certainly is. Now, we can do a whole bunch of things with the data that we've got here and get some information from it. So I know, for example, that I've got my cell here. I'm clicking in is C2. I can see that the one down here is C13. And this area over here is called your name box. Whenever you click into a cell, it tells you what cell you're in the name box. If you highlight all of the cells in a range of cells, it tells you where it starts, okay, and that brings all that down there. Now, I'll be mentioning this name box thing later, okay, because it's really helpful when it comes to doing things with Excel. Now, in order to work some of these things out that we need to do in Excel, okay, we use a thing called formulas, and you'll probably have noticed the formulas ribbon up here, okay. I'm just going to jump into the chat, make sure everyone's with me on the same page whilst I'm talking as well. Just make sure everyone's still with me, and I've gone to the wrong place because it should be on my tab. Brilliant stuff. It looks like everyone's all with me, so that's great. So what I want to try and do with this set of data, I want to put in there a total. Okay, now I can do that manually. I can type in equals, which is what we type in to start a formula, and I can write in what's called a function now to tell Excel what I want to actually do. The equals tells Excel that I'm trying to perform a calculation, and the function tells it what sort of calculation I want to be making. So this one is called equals sum, and you can see there's lots of different sum options here, but this is going to be a simple equals sum formula. And I want to put in a formula to add up all of those cells there. Now, again, I can do this manually. It's very easy. I can just put an open bracket, and I put the first cell in the range of cells. I can then put a colon in, and I can click on the bottom cell in the range of cells. You can see it highlights them all. And then I need to just close the bracket at the end, and I press enter, and that has now added all of those cells up. And that's super easy to do. The lazy way of doing this, I'll just get rid of that a second. Okay, up here in the top right hand corner, we've got the Autosum feature, and you'll notice there's a little drop down next to it as well. So I'm going to click into the cell I want the formula to go into, and rather than click on the Autosum option, and I can, because that would, as you can see, just drop the same formula in for me automatically, but I don't want that to happen. I want to click on the drop down. What I do, you can see there's actually a bunch of different options that are there. Now, the reason why I showed you how to write the formula before is because you can actually apply what we've done there with lots of other different functions. And I'm going to be showing you one which isn't in this list here during the presentation in just a few moments. But to tell you what these are, obviously, sum is to add it up. And people always think, well, sum, it doesn't mean we're doing a sum. The word sum there actually means like sum something up. So if I was to sum up Caroline, who's in the session right now, she's a forward-thinking, well-recognised, respected leader in education, known for her work in STEM and STEAM, up for an award very soon. Fantastic person, part of the EdTech 50 recognition here in the UK. I'm summing her up. Okay, now the same is true when it comes to numbers. Okay, so we want to sum these up. We're going to be adding them all together. So that's what we get with the sum. But if we get the average, go and do average instead. It does put in the average function as well. But this is exactly the same formula as we saw before with the sum formula, except for the fact that we're putting a different function in instead. So how do we go about adding these things up? Well, I'm going to add all these up by going to the sum option, which will put those in, and I'll press the return key to do that. I'm now going to go back to here on the drop down, and I can get the average, and that gives me that, and I'll press enter to confirm it. And there's the average age in the group of people there. Now, although that's not the right maths for some reason, let's have a little look at that for a second. Why isn't that doing that? I know why it's done that. Who can tell me why it's done that? Let's jump into the chat a second. Why is it giving me the wrong, and this is why it's important to always check your data as well. Who can tell me why that is not the average? See if we can do it in the chat. Well done, Barrett. Yeah, the total number was included in the formula. So always check what these different things actually do for you. So if I just jump into here, it's got C14. And so it's included that. Now, we could do this in two ways. We could either just remove the number 4 and put a 3 in by pressing backspace and putting 3 in, or I could just drag up like so, and it changes it for me manually. You should have seen that. Press enter, and there's the actual average age. Now, count is another option in here. Okay, count the numbers, and that's great, and that will give me a formula, and I put it in, and it gives me 14. Now, that's useful with this. But what happens if you ever want to actually count up words? Because if I go to here now and go to count numbers, and I highlight all of these here so that it includes it inside my formula, it hasn't told me, has it? Because the formula is counting numbers. If you want to ever sort of count up words, so you can find out how many people have taken part in your survey, how many participated, so forth and so on. That's a slightly different function, and that one is called count A. So just pop the A on the end and press enter, and then as if by magic, you'll then get the answer there. And you probably know the reason why. Now 14 isn't correct because it's including the other cells that I did not want to include. So put it into C13 again. We can see the range is correct. Boom, there we go. So count and count A. Use count A when you want to be finding out the count up a lot of things with words. But not when you're wanting to do it with numbers. You can choose simple count to add up how many numbers you have in your responses. Okay, so I hope you find that a little bit useful. Now, when it comes to formulae, I'm just going to jump onto this tab here a second. Now, formulae are really helpful for doing lots of different things. This is an example of just trying to work out the cost of a thing, and hands up, I cheated. I just put the names in again. I could have put product names, but these are just the names I used before. I put some costs in, and I've actually formatted this. So what I did with the numbers, I typed in the numbers myself, and what I did was I went to the accounting part over here, and then I chose to have the number format for currency, and I chose the pound option from within there. So with that, what I want to try and do is work out the cost plus that. So how do I go about doing that sort of thing? Now, I realize this isn't a teacher activity, okay, but we can apply this in different ways, and I'll show you how in just a moment. I wanted to do this to introduce this part for you. So to do this, we would simply go to equals, and we want to work out the sum. So it's going to have to be the original number. So we click on there. And then the next thing we want to do is to find out what's 25%. I didn't click the percentage function, so you can see the number you have to type into there. So you need to put in this number here times by this number here and add those two things together. So it's going to be B2, and then it's going to be add, and then I'm going to open a bracket, because what I want to do now is I want to basically go like this and then multiply, and the multiply function symbol, sorry, in a spreadsheet is the star symbol. So I'll put a star in, and then I'll just simply click onto this number here. Now, I've opened the bracket, so I need to close the bracket, and that will now give me the answer. So £34 with the 25% on top comes to £42.50. Now, this is the replication thing. You could be thinking, oh man, that's going to take me ages to type in that formula into all these cells here. It doesn't. It's really simple. If we move ourselves into the sort of right-hand corner here, if I click onto here and get it right, let's try that again. When I hover over it, you'll see that the icon for the mouse changes to a little plus symbol. There we go. When we have that, if we click onto our mouse and then drag down, we can replicate that formula correctly. But I know that the answers that are in here are actually incorrect, because as I move through, what it's done is it's moving these cell references relevant to where I've dragged it down. So the B2 and the B2 are correct, and the cell where the 25% for the VAT is I1, and that's correct. But when I move to the formula down to this one here, B3 and B3 is correct, but it now says I2. And that's because I'm dragging, the replication is dragging that formula down like so. Now, the reason why it's doing that is because this is a standard cell reference here I'm using inside my formula. Each time I move down, everything will move down by 1 based on the direction I've actually dragged that cell down. Now, we can make this work by changing it to what I called before, which is an absolute cell reference. Now, I'm going to stop there for a second. Let's jump into the chat and make sure everyone is happy with where we're at and the things I'm describing here. Have you got any questions about what I've shown you so far? Just to make sure that you're all happy with what I've explained there and that makes sense. I'm putting the I1 cell in the formula, and because I'm dragging it down to replicate it, it moves it down. If you could just give me a little yes mark in the chat, that'd be really helpful. Thank you, everybody. Thank you ever so much. That's really good. And what I'm going to do now, I'm going to jump back into this spreadsheet again here. I'm going to show you how we can turn those relative references to absolute cell references. Now, you can do it manually by typing it, okay, but there's a shortcut that you can do. But essentially, all you need to do is put a $sign before the first cell reference, the first part of the cell, the column heading bit, and then the row heading bit. But we don't have to do that ourselves. If we just click into the space where the reference is, if we press the FN key, the function key on our keyboard, we can tap then the F4 key on our keyboard, and that will drop in the references, the $signs for us, to make it an absolute cell reference. Now, if you keep your finger or your thumb, whatever digit you're using to press the FN key, if you press F4 again, you'll see that it only applies the absolute cell referencing part to the row. If I press it again, it only applies it to the column. If I press it again, it removes it. If I press it again, it puts them both back in again. And so it's a cyclical thing. So the FN key, hold it down and then tap F4 and it drops those things in. Now, why are we putting those $signs in? Why do they actually matter? Well, they matter because, as you've seen, when you replicate that formula down, it moves the I2 all the way down. So if I repeat the replication again by clicking in this corner here now and dragging down, we will now see all of these formulas with all the calculations are now correct. And I can check that by going to this one, and you'll see the B2, B3, B4, etc. moves down as I go down, but the I1 stays the exact same. Now that is like so useful, okay? But if any of you know me, okay, I always like to try and put in the shortest distance to try and solve a problem. Now that's a fair bit to remember, okay, in order for you to do that with absolutely everything. Now I think it's important that you have that foundational knowledge so you know how to do that. But I think equally it's just as important that we know there's a much easier way of doing it. There is a much easier way of doing it. Now, I'm using Excel Online to share these things with you today. And the next thing I want to share with you, you can't actually do it yet in the online version. So what I'm going to show you now only works when you're using Excel on your local device. So what I'm going to do, I've actually got Excel open on my Surface here. So I'm just going to tab across and go into Excel. And I'm actually in the same spreadsheet here. Now, do you remember earlier I said to you that we were going to look at this name box over here? Now, in Excel Online, we can't do anything really with this name box, but when we're using Excel on our local device, we can. Now, we can negate all of these issues around using absolute cell references by naming this cell here. So if I click onto this cell here, we can see in the name box, it says I1. Okay, now in a moment, I'm going to tap into there and I'm going to delete that out of the way, and I'm going to type in the word VAT, V-A-T, okay? Before I do that, though, I just want to show you that we can't do this in the online version. So I'm going to click into here again. You can see the other version of me there on there as well. If I click into here and I type in V-A-T and press the return key, you saw that little error sign maybe then come up. What it says, that error sign, is you can't do this in Excel Online. Just repeat that so you can see it doesn't actually work. So I type in VAT, I press enter, there we go. At this time, you can't create new named ranges in the web version of Excel. Whoopsie. Not to worry, I'll just click out of that cell for a second, over here somewhere. If I just jump back into my Excel, the version that runs on my Windows device, click into the cell, go up to here and type in VAT. I now press enter, and that VAT remains there now, and I've named that cell VAT. Now that's really powerful. And if I jump through into here and click back into that cell now, we can see that even though I'm in the online version, it does still say VAT. Now, the reason why that's powerful is because all I've got to do now in these formulae, and I'll just delete all of those there. The formula, if you remember, was equals B2 plus, open bracket, B2 times by, and before I put I1. But now, because I've named it VAT, I can just put in VAT. I can close it like so. You can see that it's already highlighted it red and it's referencing it over here because I've typed that into the formula. And what that does is that makes that an absolute cell reference without any of that FN, F4, tapping, getting the right dollar signs in, remembering all the rest of it. It does all of that for you now, and that is so much easier. So what I can do now is I can simply go to here now and drag my formula down, replicating it down, I let go. And now that's worked straight away. And as I scroll through each of them, it will just say VAT each time. And boom. Naming ranges is absolutely fantastic. And I absolutely love using this to name cells and ranges of cells. We're going to be looking at using something called a Vlookup in just a moment, which seeing some of the tweets here. So I think naming these ranges is absolutely like game changing, I think, because it makes it so much easier when it comes to doing this sort of thing. This is a great feature that works in Excel. It's so good. I'm sure it's going to come to the Excel Online version, but it's not currently yet available. So let's see how we're getting on with the session. I'm going to jump into the chat a second. I've seen a few tweets, but if you want to sort of put through some comments, give me some feedback, how we're going, how we're getting on, what we're doing. Caroline, love it. You're just saying you love it because I said there's nice things about you, Caroline, I'm sure. But thank you for the kind feedback. Nonetheless, always helpful. Anybody else got any questions or anything I've shared so far? Anything you want to come back at me with? So forth and so on. Thank you, Ganu, for the nice feedback there. So I realise that the example using VAT isn't that useful, but often, you know, we have to do things with grade boundaries and all these sort of things. And what I'm leading us up to is a point in time where we can do some quite complicated things based on the groundwork that I'm doing with these sort of starting points here. Okay, so some nice comments there. I'll leave it there. I'll pop back if you have got any questions and things, and I'm very happy to take those. Absolutely not a problem. Just do a quick time check. We seem to be doing all right. So fantastic. I'm going to jump back into my spreadsheet now. And I'm going to go into this tab here now called Test Analysis. Now I've got, and you can see that I've got a consistent theme with these names here. Okay, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go into here and I'm going to work out what the totals are. Okay, and I'm going to work out what the average are of these here. Now, again, I could type the formulas in, but I'm going to completely cheat. Okay, so the total score. Okay, and we go to the Autosum function over here and go to sum. Fantastic. There we go. And just press the return key. Go into the average, find out what the average score was. And again, go into here, choose average. And as before, it's highlighted the number above, so be mindful to that. And again, there are two ways we can do this. We can either click here where they've got the double arrow and drag it up so it changes it for us. Or alternatively, we can go to the formula bar up here and just manually change that number ourselves instead. There we go, so it popped in the average for us. Really, really, really simple and easy to do. But what I've got here in this column here, in column C, I've got a formula here which actually works out what their grade is automatically based upon their score. Now, this is called a VLOOKUP, okay, and it's V because it's vertical. Not a lot of people know this. I should put an accent on there. Not a lot of people know this, but you can do equally H lookups as well. And they work in exactly the same way as a vertical lookup. You need a little table with some data in, like I've got over here, and I'll show you this in just a second. But rather than the information being in a vertical format, you simply need to make it go horizontally instead. Now, there are some rules in order to make all of this sort of stuff work. But once you've got your head around all of this sort of stuff, again, it is seriously easy to get all these things working. So what did I do to make all of this work? Well, the first thing we need to do is to make our little lookup table in order to get these things working over here. So in order to get them working, we need to put in our grade boundaries. And it's really important with a VLOOKUP or a HLOOKUP that the start of the values is the lowest number of those values, because it goes through it in a sort of increasing incremental sort of level. Okay, so let's say, just remind myself of what I gave the grade boundaries. It went from 15 to 40. So I'm just going to go to here. I'm going to put in 15 and 20 and 25 and 30, 35 and 40. Super easy to do. I'm now going to put in the grades, and I'm going to use the letter scale rather than the GCSE scale, because we've got international audience, and I want to make it sort of clear what we're doing here. Going to explain grade boundaries and GCSEs in this session. And so what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to format this a little bit to make it a bit neater. So I'm going to go up to the option here. I'm just going to center align all of that. I'm going to highlight this bit here. I'm just going to go to the merge and center option there, where I'm just going to type in grade. Someone's just jumped onto their microphone. Let's see if that's somebody asking a question. Nope. Okay. So just jump back into here a second then. And I like to make things really clear. What I do is I put little borders around things like so, just to make it really sing and pop and clear. And the person who's put their microphone on, save having to come back in and turn that off for you. If you could turn your mic off, that'd be really helpful. I'm going to colour the top bit to make it really stand out. And just choose a simple colour like that. And the table's now made. But do you remember we did the naming thing with VAT? Okay, so we need to use that naming thing to help us with what we're going to do next. Now, the formula for a VLOOKUP, okay, and unfortunately it's not going to be on the tab here to help us too much. We're going to have to do this one from scratch. So we're going to equals, and it's a VLOOKUP. We start to type it, and it comes up, and there are a bunch of things we have to do now, and Excel is really good at helping us work out what we're trying to do with the formula. It doesn't always work first time, and that's normally an issue between the chair and the computer, i.e. us. But it does really try and help us. So it's saying here, looks for a value in the leftmost column of a table, and then returns a value in the same row from a column you specify. By default, the table must be sorted in ascending order. And that's exactly what I was saying before, and what we've covered with the creation of this table here. So the grades boundaries are in ascending order here, and we've got the grades adjacent to those in the row that they appear over here. So the next thing we need to do is put in the various bits and bobs we need to go into our VLOOKUP formula. So we open a bracket. And the first thing we want to do is put in the lookup value. So the lookup value for this formula is the grade, the score, sorry, which is in cell B2. So I'm putting in B2. And you can't see very well because this has come up to help us, but it's telling us here the things that need to go in. Okay, but we'll ignore that for now. Go to B2, which is a cell we're going to be looking up. We're then going to put in a comma. The next thing you need to do is put in your table array. Now, I could highlight all of these, and I can, and it will work. Okay, so I can just go like this. Oops, a bit too far, and it drops it in. And I can then put in another comma, and it wants the column index number. So is it the first column? No. Is it the second column? Yes. So I'm going to put in a 2, and I can close that, and it tells me the grade. It's worked it out for me. Fantastic. But we're going to have an issue, and it's the same issue that we had in the VAT spreadsheet. The issue in the VAT spreadsheet was when we started to replicate this formula down, as we went through that process of dragging things down, so it didn't work because the cell referencing wasn't absolute. Now, again, we've got a few options here. I could go up to H3 to I8 up here and use my FN, F4 and drop them in again. But actually, the best way of doing it, as we've discovered, and certainly the way I think is the best way of doing it, is to actually pop in a name. Now, we only named one cell before, but what I didn't share with you very explicitly is that we can actually name a range. So what I'm going to do now, because we can't put names in on Excel online, I'm just going to jump out of here and jump back into my Excel here, and you can go into how to, and you can see everything's there. It's pop the grade in, all the rest of it. And if you remember to give a cell a name, you would simply click in that cell, go to the name box and give it a name. To do a range, it's exactly the same thing, except for one slight tweak. To do that, I simply highlight the cell and all the other cells that I want in that range. And you simply go to the name box up there, and I'm going to call it this time my grades. I press enter. It's now named that region my grades. So all I've got to do now, I'll just jump back into Excel on here. In this formula here, all I need to do now is highlight this and put in my grades. You can see as soon as I finish typing my grades, I've just deleted the S, I'll put the S in again. As soon as I press the S, you'll see the table here sort of light up. There we go. So there are four sort of key parts to a VLOOKUP formula. The equals VLOOKUP, we open our bracket. Then we have the B2, which is the cell where the actual score is. We have the name of the range, which remember has to be in ascending order in the first column. And then a comma, and then the column with inside here. If you have data you wanted opinion from here, for example, you made a bigger lookup table, then you put 3. If it was here before, it was here before 5, so forth and so on. But it's in the second column in our lookup table. So B2, the range of cells, column 2, close the bracket, press enter, job done. Now, all I've got to do is replicate those down, and as if by magic, it's worked out all of those different grades for me. Now, if this is, if you're lucky enough to work in a school where your class sizes are 12, then it might be quicker for you to do this by hand. It's not as easy to share. You can't update things. If Roisin does a test again and gets a higher score, if Alice resits it, let's say, and she gets a 32, I can change it there, and you'll see that the grade automatically changes there. Graham resits it and does really, really well, and gets 41, let's say. Well done. Now, class sizes here in the UK are 30 if you're lucky. When you're a person who has sort of a middle leader or a senior leader responsibility, when you're getting huge data sets, being able to do this really quickly and easily, for me, is an absolute no-brainer. Now, you don't have to have the lookup table on the same sheet. I've done this for visual purposes for you. What I would normally do myself, actually, and when I was like head of department and I had sort of 400 students to have their results put in from mock tests and analyses and different things I was doing with all of that. What I would do is I would have one spreadsheet with all the actual data in, which I would then turn into information with things like this. And I would go to the bottom here and I create a separate worksheet where I would keep all of my different lookup tables. I'd have lookup tables for all sorts of things. So that's how we do our VLOOKUPs. Let's just jump back into the chat a second. I'm very happy to run through that sequence again, so you can see it again. Obviously, this is being recorded, and we'll go onto YouTube afterwards, so you can look it back and all of that. But any questions about any of that, what I was showing you with the VLOOKUP? Do you think it'd be useful and helpful? Was there anything you wanted me to repeat with any of those things? Please do let me know in the chat while I just have a quick sip of drink. Thank you, Ganu. Thank you. How about Barrett? How was that for you? Was that okay? Did you know how to do that already? Is this exclusive to Excel, or is there a similar ability in Google Sheets? I cannot possibly comment, Barrett, because this is a session on Microsoft. But it is a piece of spreadsheet software. So I would, if that's something that you use more regularly, then maybe check that out. Jacqueline, how do you share this information with parents in a Word document? Right. Okay. So information, Jacqueline, and put it into a new spreadsheet. Once I've done all the calculations and all of that, I would probably pop it into a brand new spreadsheet, and I could then use that data set to link through using Outlook. In Outlook, there's a feature called Mail Merge. Okay, and once you've got a consistent data set in an Excel spreadsheet, you can link your email to the stuff that's there. Now, this is something which you need to be very, very mindful of, because taking student data and personal information out of your school information management system needs to be something which is sort of checked by your administrator to make sure it's permissible to do so. But it is something you can do. You could get all of your parents' email addresses and add that as an extra column inside your spreadsheet, linking up next to each of the different students that you have in there. There is MIS integration between Office 365 and things like Sims and other school information management systems. So you can do that, you can put it through and things. But I would do this mail merge thing. And in the mail merge, you can put in various fields. So you can set it up so that, and I've done this myself many times, where you just drop in the email merge, link it up to your spreadsheet where you've got your various results. You can even, if you want to, based upon, and this is where the VLOOKUPs get really, really interesting. So I would have tables with comments in based upon the things that go in. It's not, sometimes it's not grades you want to go in, it's other things. And so I'll have a bank of comments which can be pulled using a VLOOKUP. So the email is populated by lots of information within the spreadsheet. So like column 1 might be the student name, column 2 might be the parent's email address, column 3 might be their results, and column 4 might be a bank statement based upon what their results are. And you can put more information in than that if you want to. But once you've done that, you link it through into your Outlook, and you set your email merge. If you've done a mail merge before, then it's a very similar process. It's just that you use Outlook to do it and do the email merge. This isn't what this session is about. I'll have a look through the various offers that are available, though, Jacqueline, and see if that's something that is going to be sort of organised by anybody else. But again, if it's useful for you, then it might be useful for lots of other people. But failing that, there are plenty of guides available to help you with those things. So we haven't got time for me to show you how to do that today, but hopefully that explains to you, A, that it is absolutely possible, and B, the means by which you can actually do that. Okay. So no problem at all, Jacqueline. Thank you. It's a brilliant question. I love like that you're going, oh, if I can do that, can I do that? And I can do that. Oh, can I do that? There are so many ways in which you can do things with this stuff. It is absolutely fantastic. And linking to what you're saying, Jacqueline, actually, is where we can now, if there aren't any more questions, jump through into the spreadsheet that I asked you to have a little play around with earlier in this one here. So I'll just give it another 10 seconds. If anyone else has any other questions, I'm very happy to take those. But failing that, I'm going to move on to the next stage of the session. Okay, so we are getting quite close to the end of our time together. So jumping into here very quickly, if you remember, this is the spreadsheet that you were working on. And what I'd like us to do now, please, is I'd like us to just jump into Form 1. We're all here. I can see some of you have been playing in here, and Caroline's been changing her name to Green. Very good. You've actually put in your own email addresses in. You've been editing things, and someone's Casablanca. What I'd like you to do, please, is just note some of these things we've got here, because when you have, this is not a huge data set, but you can see, for example, that we have got these little filters across the top here, and adding filters onto our spreadsheet when we've got loads and loads of data, again, is super easy to do. And from that, we can actually do things to help us as well. We can sort things into, so jumping on here, sort things into ascending order, descending order. We can filter by actual text equals. Okay, so let's say I've got, I want to see all the results of people who got a certain age, and it could be an age which is equal to, we can also use filters which use mathematical symbols like greater than, less than or equal to, so forth and so on. We can do loads and loads of things with this. Now, I saw a comment from Caroline as well talking about pivot tables. Pivot tables are super useful, and I mentioned earlier as well Alice's session. This last thing I want to share with you here is about Microsoft Forms, because I have not the regular way of actually going about creating a Microsoft form would be to go to Microsoft Forms, create it, and then put the various bits and bobs in there. But a new feature recently has been added into Excel Online, which I think is really useful, particularly if you're going to be setting things that you want to then analyze using some of these things that we put in today. Using some of these features we've been covering today directly from inside Microsoft Excel. So to do that, I'm just going to create a new so jumping into here. Fantastic, there we go. So I've just created, I'm going to go to here and I'm going to go to a new blank workbook, and I want to show you how we can start up a brand new form directly from within inside Excel. And I think this is really helpful, because if you do this directly from within inside Excel, then it automatically creates the workbook with all of the responses in for you to then go away and analyze. And this is a great way to then, if I mentioned Alice's pivot tables session earlier, if you're looking to get even more skilled at what you can do with the analysis of data within Excel, then this is a great sort of starting point. So to put one in, as with most things, we want to insert something. We go to the Insert ribbon, and from here we'll see the option Forms. So simply click onto the drop down next to Forms, and we're going to go to New Form. And within Microsoft Forms, we will now pick up the name of the spreadsheet. I didn't name this one, it's just Book 1. This is Book 1. Now I can call it something else. Let's call it, I want a, Excel quiz, put in a description, and we can put in a text field, and we'll call it name. And we'll put a new one in, which is a choice. Please rate this session. Awesome. Not bad. Etc. Go all the way through, and once you've finished, obviously you can share that, so I can click on the link here, you can go away and fill it in and all these things. But meanwhile, what we'll see back on our Excel spreadsheet is it's already put all these things in for us. So we're all ready to go, ready to put the information in, ready to do the analysis, so forth and so on. I was going to jump back into my PowerPoint presentation from earlier on. I wanted to just say that I still absolutely love Excel. We've covered the things that I wanted to sort of cover with you. All that leaves me really to say to finish off now is thank you very, very much for coming to and attending this session. More sessions are going to be available. Please do visit the Global EdTech Academy site on q.org/Microsoft, and in there you'll find all of the different sessions that are running. If you go to q.org/Microsoft Presenters, everyone's there, and you can get all of that stuff from people there. And if you want to know particularly the sessions I've got running and planned and going to be happening in the future, if you follow me on Twitter @ICT Evangelist, I wrote a blog post. It's on ictevangelist.com, and I shared that on my blog yesterday. I've got loads of different sessions for a whole variety of different hints and tips and things, not just using tools like today. I did a session the other day looking at how we can use 3D models in Paint 3D to then create stories and do innovative and creative things with all those different models we've made within PowerPoint. So, you know, there are lots of different things on offer from myself and from some other absolutely fantastic presenters from all around the world. So thank you all so very much for coming along to the session today. Please do feel free to get in touch on Twitter and say hello and all those sort of things if you want to. I'm very happy to take follow-up questions. I always say, ladies and gentlemen, I don't do drive-by sessions, which means I don't turn up, present and run away. Well, I do a little bit because I'm going to hang up in a second. Yeah. Please do stay in touch. I've got a question actually from Ganu now. Is there training for Excel for teachers? Absolutely. So there's lots of other sessions going on looking into Excel, Ganu. Thank you, Liz. Have a great weekend yourself too. Thank you so much. If you go to education.microsoft.com, Ganu, there's I could say plethora, but it's more of a smorgasbord, right? There's an absolute overload, a herd of training opportunities available at education.microsoft.com, and it's all free. Get yourself signed in with your Office 365, so your Microsoft 365 account, and you can go there, and you can also earn loads and loads of badges. That's how you get your Microsoft Innovative Educator badge, by completing the courses that are there. And say it's not just Excel, there's Skype, there's Flipgrid, there's PowerPoint, there's all sorts. And Jacqueline, if you're looking for some help with doing the email merge stuff that I mentioned before, I'm sure that's where you'll find that from as well. So it's education. I'll just put it into the chat for you. I'll turn my caps lock off because I want to shout at you. Education.microsoft.com. So look, have a great weekend. Please be safe out there, everybody. It is scary times. I did a click and collect shop earlier. I was there, all face masked up and everything, special gloves. It's a tough old time with crazy things happening in the world at the moment. So please be safe, look out for each other, and hope to see you very, very soon. Thank you very much, everybody.